an athlete in motion in all facets of any sort of distance. What stands out to me is when you commentate Boston, the way you describe, into that concise language so that any viewer can understand. How did that evolve over the years, and what made you, present that type of information the way that you do today?
That's a good question, Thomas. I've rarely ever been asked that, but it's something that I a long time ago felt was needed. When you're not a rights fee sport, for example, ESPN pays big rights fees for college sports, football, basketball, and of course the NBA and NFL. You have to try and earn, very seriously, new viewers. So I try and come up with information in the course of doing the NCAAs last month for ESPN, the Indoor Track and Field Championships. You try and come up with interesting backstories to kind of attract the viewers. You try and come up with stuff that they can understand. And you also try and appeal to the real track knowledgeable fans about, it could be the latest fitness, or you draw parallels that they've never heard before as to somebody's speed. You just figure out the parallels. For example, in the high jump, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this point, but the world record, I've said this on the air numerous times, I don't say it every year, but if we have time, I will wedge this in, what I'm about to say to you. And I'll say, the world record in the men's high jump is 8 feet a half inch. Take a look at the room you're in. Since the 60s, the average American household has 8-foot ceilings in most homes. Imagine a man jumping over your ceiling.
Right.
And so you try and draw parallels like that.
Yes.
The triple jump, for example, an event that goes way back into the ancient years of the Olympics with the Greeks, but it's a 3-step process. It's kind of a unique event, invented then and kept in the games and kept in track meets. And you see with the triple jump how far you can go in 3 steps. And long story short, the world record is 60 feet even, set by Jonathan Edwards of Great Britain. And he did that in 95. The distance from the pitcher's mound to home plate is 60 feet, 6 inches.
Right.
And so I said, imagine covering that distance from home plate to the pitcher's mound in 3 steps. It's
a simple, yet the magnitude of it sort of sets the table for the rest of the explanation. I have a guest with me, Larry, if you don't mind him asking a question. He's Director Ken.
Not at all.
Thank you very much. He's Director Ken Cosentino of White Lion Studios. And how's it going, Larry?
Ken, I'm fine. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I've just been sitting here listening to your voice, listening to just the parallels that you've been drawing, and just trying to envision that. That's incredible.
It really is. And, when you put it in that, I went to the 2009 World Championships for ESPN, and a friend of mine down on the field got me a copy. This just wasn't widely circulated. In my opinion, kind of a miss as far as the marketing of track and field goes. But once I got this, I had seen one of these before, and it was the breakdown of Usain Bolt's world record that still stands, that he ran 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. Now, if you're at a cocktail party, you'll say, well, gee, that's really fast. But people have no idea, the average person doesn't, of what is exactly 100 meters and how fast is that really. So I converted it to yards and did the math and put it, Ken, on a football field. Mm-hmm. And here's some of the things that came down. All right, and I'll just throw a couple of them out at you. I did about 8 or 9 of them over time. I kept computing them. ESPN loved it. We were on 7 or 8 Sports Center shows and ESPN radio, and they kept asking me the same questions. They were kind of blown away. His football 40, when I do all the math. Now, mind you, he's 6 feet 5 inches plus. I actually think he's about 6'6".
Right.
But 6'5". And if you put his time on a football field of what he did, now he had spikes. He ran the football 40 in just about 4 flat. Now, the fastest time ever recorded is 4.24 seconds.
Right, Chris Johnson.
By a football player.
Yep.
And so you get a magnitude of it. And I also did this math, among other things, on his last 40 yards. And I said, picture a football player. I said, picture a guy on a football field. And he stepped over the 40-yard line and stepped into the end zone in 2.95 seconds.
It's almost unfathomable. My question for you, Larry, is that it seems that every so often in sports there's an athlete that just shows up out of nowhere, like the chosen one. There's like a Wayne Gretzky or a Babe Ruth, and it's just so far above all the other athletes of the time. And I'm just wondering, since I have the chance to ask you, do you feel that that's has something to do with like an evolutionary process, or is it like a freak occurrence?
I think it's a combination of things, Ken. In other words, an athlete who starts young and gets good coaching, and that can be applicable in any sport. Now, you don't necessarily, there's only one or two freaks of nature as we're talking about it here. But both started very young, and at the age of 15 and 16, no one had run 200 meters, half a lap around the track, if you're not familiar with some of our viewers are not. But and he had the fastest times ever recorded by kids of that age. And so the talent was there, and he just kept growing like a weed. I mean, this kid was 17, maybe 18, and he was 6'5". And he's got beautiful strides, and he had a great coach. Glenn Mills is kind of a grandfather-type guy, and he kept building on the talent. When you have warm weather like he lives in, if the coach and you are committed, you can train in warm weather outdoors, which to me is a bit of an advantage than the winters up here that we put up with in half the country. There's just all these other things that go into it. There seems to be I don't know whether this is correct, but you could make the case that there's a slight genetic predisposition for athletes being able to sprint. If you look at migration, people from East Africa are more distance runners, and West Africa, where a lot of people settled in Jamaica, are more sprinters. There are almost no distance runners of any note ever from Nigeria